Reactor online. Sensors online. Weapons online. All systems nominal.
Hello everyone, Carrie here with your Flashback Friday. I'm cutting this one a little close, so to my patrons, I apologize. There's not a preview of this one. Today on Flashback Friday, we're looking at the old Camo Specs book. This book was put out in 1988 by FASA and covered a number of paint schemes and also had a few alternate pose illustrations for units in the game. The book also gave some information on each of the units. So as you go through here, you can see you have, the actual, um, you have the cover, then you have the inner cover, which has the mech in color, and then you get to where we have the writing, the production staff, editorial, and the table of contents. And here you can see all the units that are covered in this book. So there's 48 different units covered, and let's go ahead and start with the first one. First, we have the Eridani Light Horse. Uh, while later sources would indicate that the Light Horse used the SLDF flat olive drab green color scheme, here they have a locust of the 151st, and it's in an open plains camo scheme. And as you can see, it's an alternate version of the locust art not seen in 3025. Well, this version of the art wasn't. Then we come up to a Sword of Light Wasp. The color scheme remains unchanged today, and the gold dragon logo on the leg indicates that it belongs to the 5th. The indicating color would shift from being the background color and the dragon in front to being just the color of the dragon, but otherwise everything stays the same there as well. After that, we have American Militia Stinger. The blue and red are depicted on this as pinstripes. Later on, of course, that would become more like full-on panels. And of course, the hand-drawn logo is something that would evolve over time into what we have now. The next mech we have here is a Commando from the Donegal Guards. It's depicted in a brown camo, and the proportions of the mech are awkward to say the least. Its right arm looks like it has no arm to it, really, at least below the elbow. Later on, the guards would be depicted in a blue-gray paint scheme, so this was something that you don't see them in now. After that, we have the Crucius Lancers, and this Crucius Lancers javelin is shown in a rather interesting looking urban scheme that could also be a winter scheme. The Lancers eventually ended up in Davian green with different highlights for each unit. After that, we get into McGregor's Armored Scouts. Now, they're the first unit in this book that no longer exists. They have an urban mech here in a white scheme that looks like it has white and black quartering on the torso with yellow outlines, and also it has black and yellow highlights or accents. Overall, I mean, I like this scheme. It kind of goes back to that medieval heraldry thing that in 3025 was being promoted, but as time went on, that whole thing kind of fell apart. Next up is the Naeus Training Cadre, and it's represented by a Valkyrie in desert camouflage. Of course, the Naeus Cadre would eventually go to the standard Davian green, but I kind of like this camo scheme here. It's got a nice mix of yellows and browns, and there looks like there's a little bit of purplish color in that brown, so it's pretty cool. The next unit we have is from the Rosselhag Regulars. They did not stand the test of time either, and were disbanded in 3034. They're represented here by a panther, which is a House Carita mainstay. And to be fair, the right arm on it is just kind of weird. It looks like it was taken off of like a guillotine or something. But I mean, that has a really long right leg. I mean, perspective can mess with things, but the arm is just like totally out there. It's like they were going for like a grafted Warhammer arm onto the side of the mech. After that, we have the Capellan Hussars. This is a blackjack, and it's painted in a red and white scheme. Uh, from the description in here, it's from the Red Lancers, which now uses a red with black and gold highlight color scheme. The red and white, though, is kind of refreshing. You don't see this often in BattleTech units. And honestly, black and red seems to be overdone. You know, you have the Kellhounds, the Wolf's Dragoons, there's a Clan Wolf unit. Yeah, it's a lot of black and red in the universe. Speaking of the color black, we have Team Banzai. Why can I not talk? Team Banzai's Hatchetman right here is done in black and gold. The unit itself is a mercenary unit associated with the Federated Sons and is a shout out to the 1984 film The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai. Across the Eighth Dimension. The last reference to them has them stationed on New Avalon in 3054 in objective raids. It's most likely that CGL has distanced themselves for reasons concerning the intellectual property and not wanting to step on any toes. So next we get to the Arcab Legion and a Phoenix Hawk that they have. And this is a really good depiction of the Phoenix Hawk. I do like it. The proportions seem correct. The perspective with the arm kind of pointing towards you. The paint scheme itself is pretty much what the modern Arcab Legion's cannon paint scheme is. So this is a really good, if you're looking to paint Arcab Legion, this is actually a pretty good example of what a mech in that unit would look like. Smithson's Chinese Bandits is represented here, and they are represented with a hunchback. They have a very Wolf's Dragoons-like paint scheme here. It's black with red highlights. Like I said, it's an overdone color scheme in the universe. This would change to green with gold striping in 3057 after Operation Guerrero. So this is actually an instance of a unit changing its paint scheme, going from one to the other. After that, we have Richard's Panzer Brigade, which would eventually become Little Richard's Panzer Brigade. And it is in an Alpine camo. The illustration looks good for the times, and eventually, like I said, they became Little Richard's Panzer Brigade and changed to a dark gray with black trim, or when they used camouflage, they would use a zebra stripe camo scheme. Here is a dervish of the Certus Fusiliers. It's done in a green and white scheme and is supposed to be from the 8th Fusiliers. Eventually, it would become green, all green. Why? Because Davian, that's why. It's just, yeah. That's just the way things work. Then we get to an Arcturian Guards Griffin. First, an interesting note, the gun it is holding belongs to a Wolverine. The Griffin doesn't have the magazine on a gun like that. The gray and white camo scheme wouldn't last, as now the 20th uses flat white. So if you play Comstar, don't put any Comstar decals on your miniatures because they could be the Arcturan guards, or your Arcturan guards could be Comstar. So just keep that in mind. Now, next up here we have a Shadowhawk from the Night Stalkers. This is a great illustration and a pretty awesome color scheme. Checking out Camo Specs, their website, it does look like this scheme has stayed pretty much intact. So this is what modern Night Stalkers look like as well. After that, we have the Oriente Hussars. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. They are, we have a scorpion here. It's done in a two-tone green color scheme, which is still the official scheme for the unit. And I rather like this one. That'd be really good for airbrush fading. I might that might be the Merrick unit I do. Then we have the Larengard with a Wolverine. It's carrying its extra magazine of ammunition or whatever. Um, the gun, you can see it has a stock. Normally, you don't see that on the miniature. I don't think it was ever actually cast into the miniature, at least the old one. And it's not something you see on the current one either. The paint scheme for the Larengard stayed exactly as it is here. It's like three-quarter blue with white and blue accents. Usually you'll see some white accents over on the other side, but otherwise, yeah, that's a Larengard color scheme. After that, we have the Daron regulars. And this dragon is very poorly drawn. As you can see, it has no forearm. The gun is amazingly short on the right arm, and it is in a jungle camouflage scheme, which actually fits the unit. As in canon, they stayed using a jungle camouflage scheme. Here we have the Sky Rangers, a rifleman, which unfortunately is not in a, I guess, action pose with its arms up. I think that was done because of the text and the way the page layout was. But you can see it's red with black arms. That is still the color scheme of the Sky Rangers, excuse me, who actually ended up getting disbanded and have been reformed since the Ill Clan era. The Northwind Highlanders. This right here is a catapult, the first Kearney, I believe. This is accurate. The first Kearney uses green with the Stuart tartan. And yeah, so this is accurate back then. This is still accurate today. And I did like this look of the catapult. I do like the new one, but this right here was a really nice look for the machine. And I like the little pop-up doors and yeah, it was just very, very awesome looking. Not an awesome, but still. Then we have the Stealthy Tigers. The Stealthy Tigers have a Crusader here. It's in a desert-style camo scheme. The scheme fits the unit as well because they only use camo, and the illustration looks like it's pulled straight from Technical Readout 3025. Another one that looks like it's pulled right out of the TRO 3025 is the Leao Reserves. Now, the reserves consisted, because they're no longer with us, Vincent's Commandos and Trimaldi's Secutors. Both of these units, like I said, no longer exist, though I do feel a connection to the Commandos as they had a unicorn as their logo. It looks like the Jagermech is painted white with light gray on it. I'm not quite sure, or if that's supposed to be shadow. I don't think it is because you can see it cresting over the cockpit there. But yeah, so like a white and gray, I'm not sure how to describe it, scheme. All right, so we have a Thunderbolt in purple and white from the Free World's Guards, a color scheme that has changed very little in canon. The arm gun has different detail than the miniature and looks way better in my opinion. And this is a very good representation of the mech. And I do like it. It's simple, boxy, it has a purpose, and it does it. And this demonstrates that look perfectly here. All right, so then we have the 11th Adrian Dragoons. This archer is in a woodlands camo with white accents, panel accents mainly up on the launchers and the hands. I prefer this color scheme to the Canon one of light gray with green highlights. There's just something about the parts that just stick out as far as color that really strikes me, and I really like it. All right, Wolf's Dragoons. Here we have the Black Widow's mech of choice, the Warhammer. Actually, not really of choice. It's a long story. One day we might cover it. But here we have the Black Widow, Natasha Kerensky, and you can see an early version of the Dragoons logo in the corner behind the missile launcher. Also, I want to point out that the Wolf Spiders, the Black Widow Company, Wolf Spiders were Clan Wolf. Black Widow Company eventually ended up being black with red accents, which, in my opinion, was a huge improvement. Flat black on an entire mech just doesn't give you any depth. And once again, black and red is just overdone. Next up is the Chesterton Reserves. This is a Marauder. It's in a black and green, black, brown, and green, sorry. Or no, brown and green. My notes are weird here, and I can see it right from my eyes. It's like a brown. Brown and green camo scheme that isn't used any longer. The art is really good for the time, though, and very close to the TRO 3025 illustration again. Might have even just been pulled straight from it and mirrored from the look of it. Because I want to say that antenna is usually on the right-hand side of the mech, and in this depiction, it's on the left. All right, so now one of the most outrageous color schemes in this book, McCarran's Armored Cavalry with a polished metallic ski. I mean, no, obviously they no longer use this. But could you imagine? Oh, and also you'll notice there's like no detail on this awesome whatsoever. It's just like the PPCs and the torsos are just holes. There's no barrel, no nothing. Um, can you imagine coming across this on the battlefield and the sun hitting it, and then suddenly it's just like, yeah, it's like the guy with the giant chrome thing on the front of his car that just blinds everybody. This is it right here in mech form. I'm really glad they changed this. Next up is the Prosperina Hussars. The Hussars paint scheme is very nice. I do like it. It kind of reminds me of old racing livery. And this here is the old Goliath. Once again, this is pulled straight out of 3025. You can tell by looking at it. And overall, I like it. It's very nice. It's well done. Um, and the paint scheme itself, it's actually pretty cool. Now, this is the Tamar Jaegers. I might have spoken wrong earlier. The Tamar Jaegers were a unit that was wiped out, reconstituted in the El Clan era, and their paint scheme looks just like this now, like it did back then. Overall, it's really good. It's a lot like the Kellhound scheme, though, which is mostly red with black. Take that as you will. Like I said, a lot of black and red in BattleTech. All right, now we have a Battlemaster from the Avalon Hussars. This is from the 33rd Hussars. They no longer exist. They were wiped out in the clan invasion. Um, Generally, modern paint schemes for the Hussars, it's light gray with an accent color for which regiment it's from. This, they might have been going for light gray, but it looks like white. I mean, I like it. It's very stark, very, I don't know how to say it. It just stands out. Also, this is a mirrored image of the Battlemaster because the weapons are on the wrong side. But yeah, once again, it's 3025 art that they pulled and used for it. Then we have the 21st Centauri Lancers with a Stalker. The Lancers no longer use this, but this gray, multiple grays and whites, urban camouflage I have to say, gets really close to modern digital, and it's really cool looking. Now the downside obviously is one, the stalker has no detail on one of its legs, which is unfortunate. Two, you can see at the top, one of the things that originally the stalker was not supposed to have a cockpit on the top. The 3025 art, you're seeing like the edge of something behind it on the arm. That eventually got interpreted to be a cockpit. And its left leg has no detail. That camouflage is working amazingly well. All right, and the Fusiliers of Oriente. Tiger stripe jungle camo on a Cyclops, where the proportions are pretty good. The head seems kind of weird, almost like they took the 3025 art, didn't like the head, and modified it. Interesting thing about the Cyclops, the backpack in the original fluff or lore or whatever you want to call it, the backpack contained a mobile field headquarters where you would unpack it, have a field headquarters, and then pack it up, and you'd had a mech. And this was basically for commanders in the field. We'd be talking about like regimental and higher up, so that they would essentially have a mobile headquarters on the back of their mech. The Cyclops here, like I said, it's depicted rather well. The head's kind of funky, and the camo scheme is no longer used by the Fusiliers. And finally, the Davian Brigade of Guards. Now, here we have an Atlas. This is pulled straight from TRO 3025 again, and it is in the tracksuit scheme, as many like to call it. It's in the Davian tracksuit. And overall, it's a decent representation of the Atlas. The art, once again, this I want to say it was Dwayne Luce that drew a lot of the 3025 art. This was pulled straight from it. You can tell. And yeah, this is one of the paint schemes that I dread the most because 2 years ago I had commission after commission of tracksuit Davians. So yeah, I've done a lot of them. All right, so now we're getting into the vehicles. I really didn't check whether or not the paint scheme stayed the same. Some of them are pretty cool. The Defenders of Andurian here are going for like your van, like your 70s van look with the pinstripes and an all white or light gray body. So it's pretty cool. And this is a Harasser hover tank before the new art for it, obviously. And it looks kind of like a pontoon boat, to be fair. Um, but yeah, it's not a bad illustration of the harasser. You had a lot of lines in the 3025 stuff that kind of threw you off. This is actually a pretty good illustration. Then we have the Atrian Hussars. This is a galleon, and the galleon is a weird tank. And once again, we're going for like that 70s van vibe, it looks like, with a white and blue paint scheme and a black pinstripe running along. The position of the pinstripe tells me that the sponson guns are supposed to point up and down when it's stored, which I guess makes sense. Galleon's a light tank. It's not the best. Um, some people like it. Some people really have a thing for the galleon. And I will say the angle of the tracks at the front do not match the angle of the vehicle. So, yeah, this is not the best illustration of the tank. All right, now we have the Gallatin Regulars, who I definitely know don't use this paint scheme anymore. And this is a Pegasus Scout hover tank. The Pegasus is a fast little monster. It doesn't hit very hard, but its job is to be a scout. And I really do like this splotchy, I guess it's a desert scheme, like a chocolate chip in the front, and it sort of turns like to, I don't know how to put it, like oil on water or water on oil at the back. It's a pretty cool scheme, and I do like it. And that's something I might paint up in the future. Now we have the Fed Sun's Armored Cav. Until the Dark Age era, there was only one of them, the first Fed Sun's Armored Cav. They are green and white. And because Davian, green is a Davian thing, apparently. I don't. I've played House Davian a lot. I don't get the whole green and white thing or the green thing, but it's their thing. So we have green and white here. And this is a vedette, if I remember correctly. And the first Fed Sons, they're a cavalry unit. They're yeah, I mean, there's not much else to say about them. And the vedette was it isn't a main battle tank of the BattleTech universe, but it's sort of like a light tank um, or a medium tank. It's pretty good for what it does. It's a pretty standardized tank. You see it a lot in the universe. And this is it right here. And I really like it. All right, now we have the weirdest looking SRM carrier ever from the 4th Tau Ceti Rangers. This is done in old German camouflage, which if you ever go to a con or a game store and you see some guys playing Flames of War or Bolt Action and there's a tank and it's German, there's a chance it's going to be painted like this. This was a German paint scheme. And the SRM carrier here is just bonkers, the launcher. Everything else about it looks good. That launcher, though, is just like huge. And I'm glad that it's been changed to something that looks way better. All right, the Laren Royal Guards. These are the Palace Guards for House Steiner, and their color scheme is blue with gold, and it's still that today. And this right here, I cannot remember. Oh, this is a Manticore. Manticore is also a very common tank in BattleTech. I want to say it's a medium tank again, and you see it a lot, especially in House Steiner, House Davian. You'll see it some in the Free Worlds League, some in the Draconis Combine. Capellan Confederation just has a mix of all sorts of tanks and mechs, and I'm sure you'd find it there too. All right, the second Anting Legion. Now this right here, it's done in a very interesting purple, but this color or this tank is a Patton slash or no, this is a von Luckner. Okay, von Luckner is one of the two main battle tanks of the 3025 era, and this one weighs, I want to say it comes in at like 75 tons, and it's pretty much main gun missile launcher. It does look a lot like the Patton and Rommel chassis, but it's not. But this right here, wonderful quote unquote main battle tank in the Battletech universe. And here we have a Demolisher from the 15th Dracon. Beautiful light tan paint scheme, kind of reminiscent of the SLDF tan scheme. And a Demolisher is something you don't want to mess with. It may look small in this picture, but those two guns are autocannon 20s, and it's been scaled down to fit. This thing would be way bigger if you compared it to the other tanks. You can see by the fact that the treads do not split that this is not a drawing of the 4-tread Demolisher, which was the early FASA Demolisher, but the 2-tread, which came out after it. I don't know why they made the switch. I do like the 4-tread. All right, now we have the Ceti Hussars, and this is a partisan anti-aircraft tank. It's done in a green and gray camo scheme. I do like the perspective on this. It kind of gives you that like, oh my goodness, here's my main guns. Pretty much it's built, I want to say those are AC2s. It's built for anti-aircraft work. It can be lowered down and used against mechs in a pinch at long range, but it really does not stand a chance against them in a long-term engagement. All right, the 12th Star Guard. This is our final unit in here, and that I think is a Behemoth tank. This is up there with the Demolisher in size and capabilities, although not quite as hard hitting. It sort of has a more rounded weapons loadout. And the color scheme we have here is a green and yellow camo, which is really, really, it really pops. I don't know where you would use this. probably on a world with a lot of vegetation that's very light colored, I guess. Maybe an autumn. No, not an autumn camo. It'd be like a yellow and orange. But yeah, I really like. I do like the camo pattern on it. I do like this tank. It's a beefy tank. It's really, really. I don't know how to put it. It can take a lot of punishment, and it's not a demolisher. So you actually do have more reach. The demolisher is a 9 hex stay out of my yard machine. This is more of a hey you across the street type machine where it can plink you from a good distance. Well, I shouldn't say plink, it'll hurt you. And of course, then we just have the last, which is not scrolling up all the way, which is fine. So yeah, that is the Camo Specs book. And this is what we had to use before there was before you had Camo Specs online. I want to say Unit Color Compendium, which is more of a Mech Warrior Online thing. But this is what you had before that. And quite frankly, some of the art in here is really good. Some of it is really bad. Overall, though, it's a really interesting piece of the BattleTech history that shows us where things sort of came from as far as color schemes and how they tried to get that information out there when you didn't have the age of the internet to just look up whatever you wanted. This was it. This was your BattleTech color guide. So that is it for today. I really do want to thank all of my patrons. I also want to thank our sponsor, Fortress Miniatures and Games. And of course, if you do like the video, please give it a like. If you want to get more of this, subscribe. And if you'd like to help the channel, go check out our Patreon at patreon.com/unicorn company. You can support us as low as I want to say $1 a month, but every bit helps. It helps us get new equipment, helps us go to events and cover those, which we haven't really been able to do yet. It helps us to get the stuff we need to start doing battle reports, which is something I really want to get into. And of course, cell phone cameras only record for 25 minutes. So that is it for today. I hope that all of you have a great day, great evening, great whatever it is where you are. This is Carrie signing off.
I'm gonna find my meaning, I can make a change. I wanna play the game. You wanna sink or swim? I'm gonna go